Welcome to the Show Up Dad, where we explore fatherhood and share insights to support dads in being present for their families. I'm your host, David Mendonca, and today we have a very special guest. But before we start, I want to thank our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Tallman Equipment, your go-to source for quality tools and equipment in the power line industry. Visit tallmanequipment.com to see their great offerings. I also want to give a shout out to the Show Up Dad Foundation, dedicated to helping fathers become more engaged in their families through workshops and community support. To learn more about their mission, visit the showupdadfoundation.org. Our guest today is Luke Detraz, an Arizona native whose life shifted at 8 when he lost his father. Finding solace in nature, he developed skills in hunting and foraging, leading to a spiritual journey. Inspired by his experiences, Luke founded Field and Faith to mentor young men through outdoor activities and promote spiritual growth. We're thrilled to have you as a guest today, brother.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Luke, I just want to say, man, have you went on an elk hunt this year yet or no?
Man, I didn't get drawn for just about anything this year. We'll be doing some javelina hunting later this year and some archery deer, but nothing this year.
So where's your favorite place to go for elk? Like, where do you always try to go?
So we got this little honey hole in northern Arizona, just north of Payson, that we kind of like to hang around. But unfortunately, they've redone a lot of the roads up there, so it's a little oversaturated with people now. So
Yeah, I worked down south by the White Mountain Range in Eager, and my God, they had so many elk transferring over from New Mexico to Arizona right there on that road right there. And man, some of the biggest bulls. I guess that's the Gilas, and they have some monsters out there.
Yeah, there's some monsters out there, especially on the reservation as well. They do really well with their population out there, and they take care of everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up hunting too, so this is going to be an awesome podcast, man. But so tell us your story. How did this all transpire, brother, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So, I unfortunately, like today, I grew up in a very traditional home, which had no father in it. My mom had been divorced multiple times. She had kids from another marriage, my half siblings. Their dad chose not to be in their life until they got older. Mine tried to be, but just the parents' relationship didn't work out. So I spent every other weekend at my father's house. He lived with my grandmother because he was type 1 diabetic, had heart disease, couldn't take care of himself. So I go to his house every other weekend and, dealing with his health issues of type 1 diabetes and not taking care of himself. He just never could figure out his insulin stuff, constantly checking it, always going into insulin shock, watching him have heart attacks. And that was kind of the norm from 3 to 8 years old until he finally passed away, just from the heart disease getting to be too much. And so we moved up into the North Phoenix area with my mom and my 2 siblings, and my grandmother ended up moving in with us to kind of help pay for the bills. My mom cleaned houses for a living and just kind of did the single mom thing, man. She worked her butt off and took care of us kids. Grandma stepped in to help out where she could. And, we lived a really good life. We didn't have a lot. We did fun things. She took me camping. That was our regular vacation as a single mom, taking me camping, and would drop me off at the lake anytime I wanted to fish. Like 45 minutes away, she'd drop me off, no cell phones, no pagers. Here's a quarter, call me collect. I'll see you in a couple hours kind of thing. But that was my childhood, man. And then things started getting really bad once I hit that high school age. Because, of course, I learned everything from, TV shows of what life is supposed to be like, of this is what a teenage boy is supposed to be. And, your dad shows up to your football games. And I wanted to be in the NFL and the NBA and like every other teenage boy. And got into high school and started playing football and, realizing that my dad was going to be in the stands really, really started to weigh on me. And started drinking my freshman year of high school. Of course, that led into everything else. Started doing other drugs, and I was heavily involved with church. We grew up in the church. We lived right down the street from a very large church that we grew up in, and my mom kind of used that to help raise us kids. Sunday school, Sunday service, Sunday night service, youth groups, everything she could put us in, she did. And she did her best, but unfortunately I just wasn't there and wasn't ready yet. And it took its toll. And by the time I was 16, I tried to kill myself. The Lord saved me in that moment. And I was so mad, man.
Yeah.
I was so mad because I just, I knew God is this guy that just takes things away and he punishes his kids. And that's what I knew of God. And so I was frustrated and just kept going off and just basically told God, like, hey, if you really truly love me, let's see how much you're willing to love me. because I'm gonna push you. And so from 16 to about 20, I did every drug I could. I partied like a rock star. I did everything that was terrible until I finally hit rock bottom. I ended up getting arrested. I went to jail. Um, and really, it wasn't until my mom actually had to drop me off for my sentence, and seeing her face and seeing the hurt and the pain that I put on her
Yeah.
all those years, and finally I was like, all right, it's time to get cleaned up. It's time to change these things, and got connected with a different church. Found this really cool group of friends. Really came alongside me and just like me for me, and started reading the Bible on my own and really starting to understand what the Bible actually meant to me, and recommitted my life to the Lord.
Man, what a story. I mean, man, you just talking about that, it resonates with me so much. I mean, I grew up in a mom and dad home, right? My mom and dad, traditional family, same thing, right? They're together though. But I grew up in a home that was very, very, very dysfunctional. I mean, we had the whole family dynamic and everything. And on the outside, everybody thought we had a great family, you know what I mean? But I had a father who suffered from deep, deep father wounds, and he took it out on us. I had a mother who had her own, she was a latchkey kid, and the only father figure she really had was my dad, right? Because her dad was an alcoholic. I hate to say it, but he was. And unfortunately, they got together and they had kids, and they got, pregnant really, really young. I have two twin sisters that are 16 years, or they're 6 years older than me. And then I came along, and then my younger brother, and he passed away. He was a big hunter too. He was a hunting guide and everything like that. Unfortunately, he died hunting. He had a heart attack. But I could resonate with your story is what I'm getting at, man. It's super hard, And one of the things you said that really struck me was when you said you're looking in the stands, looking for your dad. I remember doing the same exact thing and seeing my mom there. My mom was there in the stands with all the men, you know what I mean? And she was cheering us on. And my dad, who was still alive in the picture and everything, he just, for whatever reason, did not like to be present at all. He didn't like going to those things or whatever. And it hurt me. It hurt me bad,
Yeah, it's hard, man. And that's the reality is we all, doing this ministry and being in the ministry for a while, we see the same stuff, man. We all have some sort of father wound. Mm-hmm. It's the hard truth, whether your dad was around or not. It's still the same hurt,
I don't think people understand the influence we wield as fathers. I really, really don't. Part of our ministry is helping men understand their calling, and especially like your story, my story, and tons of stories out there. We never really had a blueprint, right, of how to be a good father, and a lot of times what I'm seeing is that when a guy feels uncomfortable in fatherhood, he will avoid it. For whatever reason, human nature is, if we're in a position that's uncomfortable, we're going to try to avoid that because we don't want to go through that, and when we keep doing that, it gets easier and easier to detach from that until there's this big void. And I mean, gosh, we see it all the time, even with mothers who we're thinking, how could you leave your kids? And they'll just leave them. I've had tons of fathers I talk to where the mother, for whatever reason, will just leave the family and start acting like a teenager, and it's like, man, where is the detachment? Where is the separation? How did you get so far withdrawn,
Yeah, I joke around a lot about, saying that I learned how to be a dad and learned the expectations of what dads look like from the 1990s TV show dads. And of course, everything you see on the 90s shows, like 2000s, everything's different. It's dads are terrible and dads are dumb and dads are this. But in the 90s, you had very wholesome dads on TV shows. Mm-hmm. But that's all you saw was the beautiful, wholesome father. And what people don't realize is being a dad is the hardest thing you will ever do in your entire life. Mm-hmm. Right? What I tell my guys all the time is you never get to clock out. You are always clocked in. Nobody tells you how hard this is going to be. Raising my kids is the greatest thing I will ever do. But dang, is it hard.
Yes, it is. It'll definitely challenge you. One of the things I love to say is that the home is the ultimate training ground, right? Not only for our children, but for us. God and his perfect plan for us, right? Because the Bible says that the purpose of marriage is for godly children. Okay, he says that. So when we're raising our children, God is also, because there's no wasted moves with God, God is also using our children to develop us. So anytime we lose our patience with our kids or everything or anything like that, right, for something they do, it's a constant reminder to us, if we're able to hear his voice telling us, this is an area I need to work out in you. This is where you are lacking patience. So it's pretty interesting to see how God uses everything to help grow our character, because that's what he's after, right?
Yeah, we're teaching the next generation how to do it. And so as much as we're constantly learning ourselves, is those little eyes are always watching what we're doing. And that's the hard part, is once you get that really gut reality check, when that spirit kicks in and just like, hey, check yourself. It's time for patience. It's time for this. You got to watch because they're watching you. That's the
Yeah, for
hard part,
sure.
man.
Yeah, definitely. So you said that 90s, that was the wholesome area. What father out of a TV show stood out to you? I want to know.
You know what? I liked something a little different. So Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Uncle Phil was like the
Yeah.
greatest step-in dad ever. He was
Yeah.
wholesome. He had discipline, right? He still was that fun-loving. Still, he could be a friend and a father at the same time. That was a really good one for me to watch.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that, because I remember seeing a Fresh Prince of Bel Air where, his uncle actually had to stop a drug dealer or something like that. There's something happened where he was like a drug dealer or whatever like that, he was picking on the kids and whatever. And he stood in and he had to like be the man. He was like, oh, you will not mess with my family. And it was like, whoa, man, where'd this come from? You know what I mean? So it was interesting to see the fun loving guy, like you said, and then all of a sudden turn into this protector of his family. You know what I mean? So, and those are the different hats that we have to wear as a father, right?
Yeah, protector, provider, spiritual management. Like, we got to do it all, man.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up, with a mother who was very strong, Lord bless her, man. That was never a role that she should have been taken on by herself. It definitely takes a toll on them for sure. With that being said, where did you learn about hunting? Where did you learn about fishing? Was it from the church, like the community surrounding, or like how did you learn about that?
Fishing was really my first passion, and I was that
Okay.
kid. Like Saturday morning, I didn't watch cartoons. It was I want to watch Bill Dance Outdoors as a kid growing up, and then I'd watch Emerald Lagasse and watch cooking shows after that. And I had and that was kind of my thing. And like I would just stare at Bass Pro Shop catalogs because we didn't have one in Arizona until like 6 or 7 years ago. And so I would just stare at those catalogs all day long and watch shows and figure it out. And that's how it all started. I started fishing at the local ponds and got to the lakes, and then hunting was a little different. I didn't start hunting until I was like 17, 18. My brother's 9 years older than me, and then our cousin actually taught him how to bird hunt, took him dove hunting for the first time. So then, of course, my brother took me. And after that, it was game on. I was like, I'm hooked into this. I got to keep doing this. Whatever way I need to figure out how to hunt more is what I'm going to do. And just picked it up along the way. I've had a couple guys come alongside with me. And there's one guy in particular that we used to quail hunt all the time together. He's a little older now and can't do it anymore, but he's the one that really just kind of inspired me with just my walk with God, but quail hunting especially. And then, after that, it's just any way that I can hunt, I want to figure out how to do it. And I've had to figure out how to do it, which has been the hard part.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome that you took a liking to that. I was very fortunate. That's something that my dad could relate. He couldn't relate to us with sports, really. I mean, wrestling, yeah, because that's what he did, and he was also a gymnast. But football and all that, he never, played that or anything like that. So when he attempted to play something like that, he would throw the football to us, and we're such little kids, we didn't know how to catch. So we'd wind up with a bloody nose or something. And then he would feel ashamed because, man, here I am trying to play catch with my son and I just bloodied his nose, and mom's out here with an ice pack and everything like that. And he would just stop. You'd just be like, okay, well, that's enough, stop crying, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Um, but with that being said, hunting, fishing and stuff like that, that's something that he definitely showed us. He shared with us. That was his passion. And unfortunately, in 2020, like I told you before, my brother passed away hunting, and he blamed himself for that for a long time. And he said that he wishes he would have never showed him that, because maybe he'd be still alive. Because my brother loved hunting. He was a lineman just like myself, and he worked, and that's what he did. He worked to hunt. You know what I mean? To go on these lavish trips and stuff like that. And I remember him saying that he wishes. So pretty
Man,
crazy.
I can't imagine a better way going out than being on a mountain, man. Personally,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely, that's what a lot of people tell us, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And I do know that he is in heaven, but nevertheless, the pain is still there,
I get it, man.
when you lose somebody like that. Um, but so we're talking about hunting, fishing, and stuff like that. Tell us about your organization, man. Like, how did that get started and stuff? Like,
Yeah, so 2019, I got back into the church. I was like 21, 22 years old,
mm-hmm.
and met my wife very shortly after, kind of recommitting, and instantly got married, had a kid right away. Got into this church of guys that I knew in high school, that were all like the pastors of this church, and we just got really connected in the church, and just loved it. But we were your typical Sunday goer, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, I'm just going to go to church on Sundays, and anything in between, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started just really kind of diving in deeper, and really kind of feeling convicted of that I need to be doing more. And then I remember in 2019 hearing the Lord speak to me in the middle of a service, and it was the scariest thing ever, because
Mm-hmm.
it sounded like somebody was screaming at me in the middle of a church service. It was one of
Wow.
those moments when I heard it and I started looking around like, did you guys hear that? Because I heard something pretty intense. He said, be a father to the fatherless.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I was like, I have no idea what that means, but I'll continue to pray about it, and seek the Lord on it, and see what happens. And that same year, I just started getting into ministry as well. And so I started leading our college ministry at our church, and really kind of interacting with a lot of these guys that were, 18 to 22, and seeing the same thing that I went through at that age. And I think that's why I connected so well with them. And of course, like, hey man, I know you hunt and stuff. Will you teach me how to like go do that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, get to do ministry and shoot guns, and like, I can't think of a better way to do this. So it really started with that. We took some guys out, and taught them how to dove hunt, and it just kind of kept escalating. And then, seeing the same stuff in youth ministry, and I did a lot with our men's ministry and retreats and stuff. And the same thing of like, just guys going, hey man, my dad didn't take us camping. My dad didn't take us hunting. Like, I really want to do this, and I want to show my kids. Will you teach me how?
Mm-hmm.
So of course I started taking guys out hunting and fishing and doing all the stuff with them. And I went through a circumstance with a guy in particular that had recently got saved. He went from being a vegan to a meat eater, which is like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
But I started walking with him and became a really close friend. And he had a dad that him and his dad were best friends, and constantly were talking about fatherlessness issues. And of course that struck home for me. So me and him were always having these conversations too. And then his dad ended up taking his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there through the whole process with him, like when he found his dad and everything. And it was just like, man, I'm sorry, but welcome to the club. Like, you're now in this club of guys that have to figure it out on their own. So what are we going to do about it? And so one of my sayings is, take it to the mountain. Anytime you're in a funk and you're in a bad place, let's just go for a hike. Let's get on top of the mountain, just get away from the noise.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on a hike, and we just started talking about life, and where God was pushing us. And he's like, man, we got to do something more. And instantly the word field and faith popped into my head. It's like, all right, let's do this. Let's start this up. Let's start a ministry at the church and see where it goes. Let's help out those guys that just need some extra help. Those guys that have father issues, their father wasn't around, they want to do these things. Let's turn this into something.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started going after it, and he ended up having to step out of it very early on. But it was a ministry at our church, in like December of 2022. Announced it to the church what we're going to do, and then the next month I kept getting this feeling of the Lord speaking to me going, hey, this is going to be bigger. This is going to be a nonprofit. This is going to be a 501c3. And I'm like, Lord, I have no idea how to do any of that kind of stuff. This is not my wheelhouse. Let me just take some guys out and have fun. And then the next month, our church closed. And
Oh
so I was
man.
like, okay, this is what you were telling me. So I filled out all the paperwork, and we started Field and Faith as a nonprofit 501c3 in beginning of 2023.
Yeah. That's a huge accomplishment because I know exactly what you went through. We started ours too, 2020. Same thing, prompting from the Lord. Um, Almost lost my wife in 2018, through a chronic illness. And same thing, man. To get your nonprofit 501c3 status is extremely, extremely tough. But when you got God behind you and it's His vision, He's going to lead you all the way, man. So that's really cool that you're able to get that for sure.
Yeah, he made it really easy. Like I've never, I've owned some businesses and stuff over the years, and I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of a lone wolf and done consulting in the beverage and hospitality industry. And so, starting a business and doing all that kind of stuff wasn't really my area of expertise, especially nonprofit. I've done zero things with a nonprofit previous to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, me either, man. I was just some journeyman lineman who made a ton of mistakes, and God is very gracious with me, very gracious with me to change my heart and get me on the right path to where I'm at now, where I'm a discipler. I disciple young men, and it's awesome when you do what God, when you're obedient to what God says, He starts opening up so many doors for you. It's just blessing after blessing. It's not easy by no means, right? But just tremendous blessing when you're obedient, right?
It's crazy. It's great. Yeah, we just went through a whole thing over the summer too. We actually just adopted a child, and
Wow.
it wasn't our plan. It wasn't in the timing. I went without work for like the last 6 months prior to this happening. So like we had zero savings account and all that thing, and this baby dropped in our lap unexpected, and he provided the entire way financially and support and everything. And so it's been, yeah, I can watching the Lord confirm stuff and say, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. As long as you just listen, He'll provide the
Mm,
rest.
yes, definitely. Listen, that's the key point right there. Um, Part of this podcast that I started, right, it was teaching me how to listen. That's the one part of the training because I couldn't listen before, right? And part of it was learning how to listen, to be a better listener for my wife, to my children, to His voice, being sensitive to His voice when He's leading and prompting me. And I've learned a tremendous amount from just being a podcaster. It's pretty interesting the way God works. He doesn't waste any moves at all. Now, so you have this whole 501c3, this whole ministry, right? That's surrounding by the outdoors, right? One of the interesting things that I heard you say was that take it to the mountain. Okay. And that's actually pretty awesome because every time you saw Jesus, when he needed to get away from the noise, he always went, he isolated himself and he went to the mountain or he did whatever he needed to do to get with the Father, to get alone. Is that something that you encourage too when you get away from the noise and stuff like that to have that connection with God?
Yeah, it's right. It's how do we make this as biblical as possible? And
Yeah.
so, right, we saw Moses do it, we saw Jesus do it. Like they would retreat to the mountains, pray, and why? Right, is really the
Mm-hmm.
idea behind it. It's not just going to get away. It's you have to get away from the noise. You have to get in that quiet
Mm-hmm.
place because the second we're around a cell phone, man, we start looking at everything that we don't need to look at. It's the same idea of why men's retreats are so good. But then as soon
Mm-hmm.
as people come down the mountain, things start falling apart again. It's just you got to get up on the mountain, you got to get in the way, and you got to get in the quiet. And it's something that I learned early on too, man. Is the outdoors were made for us men. We were made to be in the outdoors, right? We were called to have dominion over the land, but really we
Mm-hmm.
were called to be stewards of it. And how do we be stewards of it? By actually being in it and getting to actually notice God's creation and the beauty of how everything coincides and works together. And so you have to get out there and actually notice it. Because there's a lot of times, like even this last weekend, we took all the guys quail hunting for the first time, our 18 and over group. And there was a moment where I was like, you need to stop. You need to stop and have these guys actually just look at the sunrise and have them appreciate, hey, who gets to actually watch the sunrise this morning?
Yeah.
You're not gonna get a lot of those, man. And it's a beautiful thing, like the way God just paints the sky. Like look at how the mountains are, look at how the clouds are, look at the things that you can hear when you actually just stop. Like how many birds can you pick out right now? It's just those small, beautiful things that people just forget to stop and actually listen to.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. We have to unplug. I mean, gosh, life is so fast. That's one thing I've learned. We moved to Southern California 3 years ago. And compared to our lifestyle back then, living on a ranch and stuff like that, man, this is so fast out here. You have time for nothing. So you got to be very, very, um, you have to be very, very careful with what you give your time to, especially out here. One of the ways that I encourage men to get alone with the Lord, if you can't go to the mountains or something like that, is right when you wake up. The Bible says that apart from me, you can do nothing, and you're supposed to abide in him. Well, part of that abiding is being with him, in communion with him, having relationship with him, you know, um, taking your time early in the morning. Like you see throughout scripture, a lot of these men woke up early before the day started, before the dawn started, before the noise started, right? And they got alone with God just to crawl up into his lap and be like, hey, Father, I'm here. Thank you. I appreciate you. Everything you're doing. I just want to get to know you better. Please change my heart. Please help me today, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But that's what God wants. And you can only do that when you're giving him the time. I mean, God's very, very patient. He is a perfect gentleman. He doesn't force you to do anything, but he's waiting there, waiting like the prodigal son for you to return. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you reap what you sow, man. You have to start in the morning. That's what I always tell everybody. It's like, I spend the first hour of the morning is my time. I have to wake up an hour earlier just to make sure that the kids are going to wake up, but that's when I spend time in prayer and time in the Word. And I get a little nerdy and kind of weird sometimes, but it's like, right, joy comes in the morning, and there's science behind even those first rays of the sun that come up, that they're beneficial
Mm-hmm.
to your health. And it's like, I believe that God did that for a reason, right? We're supposed to be up in the morning as men, like actually saying thank you. Like just starting your day off with a thank you is the most
Mm-hmm.
beneficial thing you can do for your day. Just to actually show your appreciation for the God that created you and actually gave you this day.
Mm-hmm. And think about how humble that is. The Bible says that God resists the proud. But when you're getting up, taking time out of your day, out of your comfort to get up and just say thank you, man, that is humility at its finest. And that right there, my friend, is something that God will not shun. He will honor that. So I think it's awesome. And, you know, I think more and more people need to really focus on that. I know right now there's a big push for getting up at 3 a.m. and Jocko Willink and all this stuff and working out and getting that pump on and stuff like that. But it's so much more deeper. It's that gratitude. It's that thank you to God, you know?
Yeah, God taught me something earlier this year. Our church does a 21-day fast at the beginning of the year, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, yeah, I could do that. And so I think I made it like 6 days. And of course, it was turning into like a proud moment of like, I don't need food. Like this is a sweet diet. You know what I mean? It's kind of what it was turning into.
Yeah.
And then the Lord spoke to me. He goes, I don't want your food. I don't care about your food. I just want your time. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this things will change today. And so I actually have an hourglass. And so I set up the hourglass, and that's when I start my time. And if for some reason I got to stop, I put it on its side and then jump back into it and turn it back up. But after that, I was like, I need to dedicate at least an hour out of my day. Like that's a minimal amount of time that I could give. And so since doing that, I mean, things have just been different.
I bet. When I first started this, I had a guest that came on, real powerful speaker, Christian brother. He was a rapper and stuff like that. God completely changed his life. He had father issues as well. But he came on the show and just such a great motivational speaker. And he was telling me, he's like, man, he's like 1 hour is for like regular people. He's like, or no, how did he say? He's like 15 minutes or something like that is for like regular people. He's like, for you and for the calling you got, for us leaders and ministers and pastors and stuff like that and influencers. He's like, oh, you got to spend more time with God. He's going to require more time because he's about to show you so much more, and that always stuck with me. Just for those who are called, spend that time with him. and he will.
Especially now too, you hear the statistics of how much time people actually spend in the Word, or how much time. It's like 2.5 minutes or something per day. It's just like, and you wonder why. You wonder why
Mm-hmm.
your life is the way it is, and you're going in circles because if you're spending 2.5 minutes. I mean, what kind of relationship can you have with anybody for 2.5 minutes a day? That's what it really breaks down to, right? Like if I
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
have 2.5 minutes with my wife every day, like she would not be here anymore.
No, no, for sure. Yeah, no, you have to actually put in that time, man. And that's what people need to understand. It's not religion, it's relationship. And how do you build that relationship? By spending time with the Father.
Yeah, it's a quick conversation. I teach, hey, start with 5 seconds. A five
Mm-hmm.
second thank you here in your car. That turns into 1 minute. Spend a minute
Mm-hmm.
here and a minute there, right? It doesn't have to be a set apart 1.5 hours in the morning. Do it throughout the day, man. Like just look at the clouds and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the way they look. Like Arizona is the best sunrises and sunsets in clouds all the time. Like it's amazing. Just take
Mm-hmm.
5 seconds, and that's all. That's all it has to start with. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
having a friendship, a relationship. It doesn't start off. You're not on the phone for 3 hours. It starts off small with a couple texts here and there, and like that's how it has to start. It starts with a small conversation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Luke, what is your most memorable hunt?
Man, that's a good question, actually. Probably my elk hunt. I've only
Mm-hmm.
been lucky enough to shoot one elk. Um, and of course, Arizona, it's a lottery system. So if you get drawn, is a whole nother story. So I've been drawn, I think, 3 times in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got drawn for a spot, and the way we do it is you're allowed up to 4 people on your same tag, but our friend group always puts in individually. So that way, if one of us gets drawn, we all go.
Mm-hmm.
And we rent a cabin together because typically it's the day after Thanksgiving, so we do a friendsgiving together, and then all the guys go out hunting and all the families hang out together. And the year I got my bull, another buddy also got drawn. So there's 2 of us, and we had this little honey hole that we always like to hunt. It's kind of small to have 2 people hunting in the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, we got on top of this mountain, freezing cold, wind blowing in our faces. We spread out like 20 yards on this tiny little hilltop, and he was looking to the west, and I was looking to the east, and even in the darkness, we could see a big bull coming down the mountain. That was kind of in my view.
Yeah.
So I was getting excited for it, and watching this bull come down the hill, and it was first light, and he was a little too far to shoot. And so I kind of just sat on him, and I was waiting for my buddy because he had some bulls coming down on his side as well. So we're texting back and forth. Luckily enough, we had service. I was like, hey, let me know when you're going to shoot so I can also get ready to shoot. Like a minute after I send that text, I hear a boom. I'm like, are you serious, man? And he shot a couple more times. And of course, I looked up and my bull was just gone. And
Mm.
so I'm getting frustrated. And sure enough, this bull pops back out at like 350, 400 yards. I'm not ready. I take a shot and just completely wildly miss. Scope myself in the face because I was rushing it. And he ends up shooting his bull. And then, of course, I'm frustrated because, he didn't wait for me. And then, sure enough, about a minute later, this bull pops up on the hill right in front of me at 150 yards.
Mm.
So, of course, I'm like, this guy's going down. And shot him, perfect shot, right through the heart. He dropped right there on the mountain. And so we had 2 bulls down at 7:30 in the morning. Luckily, there was 5 guys there, and we had both bulls broken down and out in like
Mm-hmm.
7 hours or something crazy because we had to hike them out like 2 miles. But it was such a
Wow.
cool experience. Like I had my brother right there with me with some of our good friends, and to be able to like go through that experience and be able to go home with kids and do the whole thing, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Did you get blooded
Of
for your first?
course, of course, man. Just walking with that head out on the back of my shoulders,
uh,
man, it was just covered.
yeah, my father, one of his traditions when we would kill our elk or deer or whatever was he'd take the heart, right? And he would give it to us to bite a piece out of it. Or he would have his little cup and get some blood, and he'd put some blood on us and have us drink a little bit. And he said that was a tradition that you're supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we saved
And
the heart and everything, and got it all processed and stuff. But yeah, it was cool. It was a fun experience, man.
what was the weight that it dressed out to?
I actually don't remember. We got like 221 pounds of meat out of it after all said
Mm.
and done. So
Yeah, that's not bad. That's a full freezer right there, man. That's good. That's real good.
it's about half of my freezer. I got a big freezer.
Did you have the whole stuff done up, like steaks, flanks, all that stuff, or was it just summer sausage, or how did you guys divvy that up?
No, I do it up. I'm a steak guy personally. I love some ground
Mm-hmm.
meat and stuff. And I do my own jerky, but yeah, I try to keep it as simple because we do roast too. That's like a big thing when we get a big animal is to have a Christmas roast.
Mm.
So I like doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I always like the loins. We'd always cut off the back loin, back strap, and would cook it out there where we're
Yeah,
at. You know what I mean? And
we do the tenderloin that way. Yep.
yeah, for sure. And that man, it's such a great time, man. I haven't been hunting since my brother passed away, and I'm getting the itch again. Um, I know my father's been talking a little bit about it. My nephew just got another bull this year, which is really cool, and they're on their hunt right now as we speak. They got another tag that they're filling because we get landowner permits in northern New Mexico, and for our land that we have, and they're trying to fill that tag right now as we speak. So hopefully they'll fill it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah, we got my number if you ever want to come to Arizona.
Yeah, for sure. Heck yeah. Well, with that being said, brother, you talked about this great experience, just really just focusing in, seeing the sun rise and stuff like that, being in the mountain, being in the presence of the Lord, and then just this glorious day. How important is that for fathers to try to share that with their kids? What do you think?
It's incredibly important, because I think that's one thing that I've noticed, especially with the ministry side, is there's one area where men are failing nowadays, and that's just having confidence and resilience. And
Mm-hmm.
so being in the outdoors in general just teaches that, right? There's no cheat code to get out of a life or death situation when you're in the woods, and being able to like be on a hunt or a fishing trip and to have success is the biggest confidence booster you can ever have. So as a father, like teaching those small things of, like even this last year, I made a bad shot on an archery hunt and missed, and I could have chose to walk back. Everybody was watching me, and I could have chose to walk back and be frustrated and pissed off that I made a terrible shot. But I was like, man, that was so exciting. Like I got so close, and oh, you know what? I'll get it. You know what I mean? But being able to show that, like, it's okay. It's okay to
Yeah.
fail and to show your kids that, but to show them like why you're out there and to
Mm.
appreciate why we're doing this, because it's more than just going out and killing something, which a lot of people look at us like that's what we do. It's like, no, this is what we're called to do as being stewards of this land that God gave us. Is to hunt and to provide for our families, and to show that respect to that animal and actually cook it up and then have that fellowship with our family. And that's part of what we try to teach is like, that animal got to live an amazing life out in the wild. Like it's a lot better than those chickens getting farmed. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And so they get to have an appreciation for the land and the outdoors through that. And to me, they get closer to God through those places.
Mm. I like that you said fellowship. For sure, because it's much, much more than the hunt. It's much, much, much more than the chase and killing something. It is that fellowship, just getting like-minded guys around, getting unplugged, and just doing what God, like you said, God created us to do. There's a great book out there, Wild at Heart. John Eldredge talks about it, and we were designed to be out there, like you said. We were designed to to climb that mountain, to see what's on the other side. And that's one of the things that my dad always just tell me. He'd be like, man, don't be afraid to dream. He's like, oh, have you ever wondered what's on the other side of the mountain? And I took him literally, and there's this huge mountain when I was a little kid, right? And by golly, dude, I climbed that sucker. I was like 6 years old, bro, and I didn't know how to get down. And I remember praying to God, God, please don't let me fall, because it was a sheer cliff. But I did it. You know what I mean? And by God's grace, I was able to make it down and not fall. You know what I mean? But that was a confidence booster. Like you said, being out in the wild, dude, and limited resources and all that stuff. That's a confident booster. Especially if you get lost. You know what I mean? It's you have to really, really pay attention. One of the things I learned as a young man in the forest is that it gets a lot darker. You know what I mean? So it might be still light outside, but when you're in that forest, you better turn around and get out and start working your way out of there and start leaving your tags and stuff like that, especially if you don't have a flashlight or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And it gets a lot darker. And that was a lesson I had to learn. You know what I mean?
It's so true. And just something that, you said, I mean, just the confidence aspect, I think is such a big deal for men as a whole. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we just went on a men's retreat with some of our guys, and we had this moment where we were all praying over people, and they're like, I just, you know, I'm not sure if I'm hearing the Holy Spirit. And right, and to be able to get in those quiet places and to build up that confidence at an early age, it helps you down the line with your relationship, because like, yeah, I know what that voice actually is. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it just reminds me of, you know, Elijah's like listening and thinking he's hearing Samuel's voice, but it's like, no, it's the Spirit talking to you, man. Like you just have to listen to it. You have to have the confidence that that's what that is, and actually believing that, because it's easy to second guess it and not have that confidence and to be scared of it, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
everything is scary nowadays. It's like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like that. Get outside a little bit. It'll teach you how to actually live your life.
No, I agree. I think a lot more people need to start getting outdoors for sure. We take so many things for granted. We live in the microwave generation now where everything's super, super fast. If you would actually take the time to do a hunt or see somebody like who's a hunter and stuff like that, see what it takes to process that animal so you could have food at the table, I think it would change a lot of people's perspective for sure.
Yeah, just the time scouting and all the energy that's put in, and hiking and all the miles that you, man.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of work, but it's totally worth in the end, because
Yeah.
it supports everybody. It supports your community.
Mm-hmm. It's so rewarding too. I mean, to see the fruits of your labor, I think is one of the greatest blessings we can do. All that hard work put in, right? And to see that hard work put in and what it produces, the fruit it produces, I mean, that to me, that's worth anything. You know what I mean? It's so rewarding to see that, you know what I mean? That accomplishment. And even when you don't accomplish it, you know what I mean? There's a lesson right there that we can teach our kids about perseverance, about not giving up. You know what I mean? That not all the time are you going to get what you want, right? I mean, that's a big lesson I think that little boys need to learn. I'm trying to work with my youngest son right now. He is super competitive, and he does not like to lose at all. And when he loses or he thinks he's going to lose, he gets mad. You know. So I'm working with him on that aspect now, that it's okay to lose, man. Just try your best. That's all you can do. You can't win everything.
Yeah, we fell into this participation awards thing, and I love it. Right, I love the idea of it. It helps kids feel confident and stuff, but at the end of the day, it actually doesn't. It does the
No.
opposite effect, and it tells them that they are better than everybody else, and it creates this selfishness in kids that just destroys them when they get older.
No, I can't agree with you more, man. That it does. It creates a selfishness. I mean, you see it in so many adolescents, teens, right? When they won't even open up doors for the elderly anymore. They won't open up doors from the mom. Like the other day, I saw this child, and he's not a child, he's an adolescent, but his mom's over there pumping gas, cleaning the windows, and he's sitting down on the phone. I mean, he's about 16 years old, and he's over there playing on the phone. And I looked at him, and it wasn't my place to say anything, but I couldn't help myself, man. Sometimes I say stuff, and I told him, I was like, man, I can't believe you're sitting in there and your mom's over here, cleaning your windows. And the mom kind of looked at me. She knew I was right. She didn't say anything, you know what I mean? And the kid just kind of just like was like, whatever, and kind of blew it off. But it's something. And then I had to realize that, man, that's something that us as fathers need to show our children. And then I started getting convicted. It's like, oh, what if he didn't have a dad to show him, you know? So we got to always be aware, of the things we say or whatever, even if they're right. You know what I mean? We never know the person's situation or what they're going through or whatever. We can never assume.
Yeah, but at
Yeah.
least you did your part, and you kind of stepped in and showed them that, hey, there's a different way to live, even if it's
Mm.
just that little bit of that seed planted. He'd have no idea where that grows. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I recently had a situation, and it was a revelation that God had showed me. I went to go drop off some stuff for Goodwill, some donations and stuff, and it was kind of big. It was like dressers and stuff like that for underprivileged kids. And I pulled up and I was like second in line, and they had this big old 32-foot trailer, and this kid's just sitting there not doing anything. And two people in front of me were, with both women, and they're unloading like tremendous amount of stuff out of their minivan. I don't even know how they got that in there, right? And he would not get up to help them. And I'm like thinking to myself, man, what's this kid doing, So I started getting kind of bugged, and everybody in line, California is very passive. People will not say anything. They just will just sneer and get mad at you, but they are very, very passive aggressive. They'll never say anything and just expect you to know, right? So you could tell the people's, their faces, everything, their expressions, everything. People are all bugged about this whole thing with this kid. So I pulled up. I decided to change it, and I was very nice to the kid because I had a lot of heavy stuff too myself. And I told the kid, I was like, hey, man, how's your day going? And he kind of like freaked out. He's like, you talking to me? And I was like, yeah. I was like, how's it going, man? He's like, oh, man, dude, you're the first person that's really talked to me all day. It's going good, sir, and all this stuff. I was like, hey, can you help me? I got this stuff. I don't even know if I can take it here, but it's a donation. What do you think? He looked at it. He's like, yeah, let me help you. Let me get down and help you. We'll carry it off. We'll put it here. All it took was me just asking him how his day was, starting a conversation, not assuming that he was a lazy generation like a lot of people are saying right now. It just took me reaching out to him and getting to his level, and man, he was a hard worker. I was very, very impressed, Then I drove off and it was like, cool. And I was like, oh man, thank you for teaching me that lesson, Lord God, never to assume,
It's crazy, man. This are the things that not even kids, just people are doing nowadays. I remember just a couple of days ago, I was at a store doing something, and I was handing out samples for work, and just the refusal that people will not look you in the eye anymore.
Yeah,
right? They do everything just to look past you and act like they didn't even notice you, and you're just like, man, like that hurts. That hurts for me, but it hurts for you, for them too. It's like, well, if they're doing that, then who's doing that to them as well, right? Like, how many other things in their life are they just passing up and not realizing what's happening? And just like having eye contact with people, man, like showing that we're humans and it's okay. And like, it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable with each other, like just eye contact is a basic vulnerability thing that is so important to me, but just to see like how it's just not a thing anymore. It's kind of sad.
It is. I agree with you. And man, you just saying that, I've noticed that too. That's interesting that you said that, because it is a vulnerability, right? I grew up looking at people around the eye too. And you're right, man. People turn their head down and stuff like that. I had this one lineman that I worked with who was pretty well liked. I mean, he had a really, really good reputation of being the man. He's just a heck of a lineman. Good dude, good leader. Big dude, looked like Mike Ditka, just had the little tiny mustache, you know what I mean? Walked, he was just like a bear of a man, just super strong. And when you think of lineman, this is the guy, when you say, oh, I'm a journeyman lineman, like he was like the poster boy for these guys. He was just a big burly man. And he was talking to me one day, and he's like, David, he's like, have you noticed no matter what job they give me here, it could be doing a 3-phase reconductor or underground on the network or even just sweeping the yard. He's like, I could hold my head up high because I knew I gave my best job. No one could ever take that away from me. He's like, I could walk down this hall right now and I could stare everybody in the face knowing I did a good job. He's like, if you notice there's people that walk around here, they put their eyes down, they can't look at you. It's because they know they are not doing what they are called to do. And that stood out to me. This is a guy who was not a believer at all, or anything. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty deep there, Guide,
Preach it, man. Preach it.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this guy's speaking the truth out here, he convicted me. But I always try to tell my sons that. I've told plenty of the apprentices that I'm in charge with, the same thing, do the best job you possibly can, no matter what. Just do your very, very best and have that confidence to know that, hey, man, even if I failed or whatever, at least I did at least I got in the arena, right? At least I tried my best, And I think that's important. I think that's what fathers need to teach their children, for sure.
Yeah, that's something we've been working on with our kids, especially with chores and stuff. It's like, man, are you proud of the work that you did? Because you should be. Same thing if they do it bad. If you know they did it bad, it's like, are you proud of that work? Is that something you want to be known for?
Yeah.
It's a good way to teach them on the good and the bad end of it.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I used to go, my dad would sell wood for extra money, right? Every year, Christmas trees and stuff like that. And I'd go with him to go stack the wood because that's back when customer service was still in. So he just didn't split the wood, right? He delivered it to your house and he stacked it, and it was a true cord of wood. There was no jipping, no half trucks or whatever. He did all that, and I would go with them. And I remember I'd be stacking my end, and he'd look at me. He's like, "Man, you better stack it right, because if you don't, you're gonna stay out here all day. You're gonna do it again until it's right." And I'd just be like, "All right," and I'd just be restacking it. But those are lessons that a father teaches, right? To do the job right the first time. You don't want to come back. You don't ever want to have that name. You know what I mean? That you do shoddy work, right? Craftsmanship.
Totally. Yeah. It's your reputation too. I think a lot of people look at reputation a little bit different nowadays, and it's like, how do you want to be represented? Somebody that does the work right, or somebody that kind of just doesn't care about anything, and that kind of falls in the line of everything else you do too. So it's like, right, people know me from my childhood and my high school years. Now they're like seeing me in the ministry side, and people still like, but you used to do these kind of things. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I got saved. Somebody bigger than me doing a lot of work in my life, so this is why I'm here still.
No, it's crazy how the reputation follows you. I got out of the military and I went home, and I was a completely different person, more controlled, not as still crazy, but just more controlled, right, through discipline. Before I was a believer or anything, and I ran into this kid. And man, he still remembered from when I hit him in the head with the yearbook, like from 7th grade. And I was like 20 years old, 21 at the time. And that's the first thing he said. He's like, "Oh yeah, you remember you hit me in the head with that yearbook?" And I'm like, "Wow, dude." I was like, "I am so sorry I did that. If that had so much of an influence on you that you carried it for this long, I apologize. I really do." And he didn't know what to say, you know what I mean? But I was kind of blown away that that's how he remembered me by, you know? So reputation follows,
Forever. Yeah, especially with social media now too. I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that's social media. Speaking of which, man, what do you think about that? Do you think it's like damaging our kids?
100%. Yeah, I have a 14-year-old daughter. That's my oldest, and she has zero social media for a reason. Typical middle school stuff of daughters and looks and outfits and nasty girls and saying stuff, and social media was the last thing we wanted to deal with. So she does have a cell phone because we fought that for a long time, but we don't allow any social media. And luckily she doesn't fight us on it, because we have those hard conversations with her of like why we don't do social media and just the harsh effects of it. And it's like, well, yeah, what's happening at school now, times that by 1,000,000, and you're gonna have all the same people times 1,000,000 that don't even know you doing the same stuff. It's like, it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how you act. Like, people will love you for you as long as you actually are you. And so, yeah, it's just garbage. I hate social media. Obviously we have to do some of it, but for work related reasons and stuff. But there's just little beneficial stuff to social media nowadays. And I love stuff that you're doing, even with, some of the clips that you're putting out and stuff. Just right. It can be used for proper channels and stuff, but unfortunately, the devil's got a hold of it. The algorithm, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of the things that I thought of. I was like, man, if the devil can use this to destroy people's lives, man, why can't we do it to bring hope? That's part of our mission. Part of our foundation is to bring hope. People have started to lose hope, especially with the way the world is going right now, the whole thing surrounding the next president election, everything, people are really, really losing hope. And at the same token, they need that beacon of light, and unfortunately, not one man is going to save anybody. You know what I mean? We need to really see who the true savior is. And that's our hope in Jesus Christ. The Bible says to trust in God, not in man. And the reason being is because man is still man. They make mistakes. They will fail.
Yeah, it takes the church to rise up, man. We're supposed to be a light on the hill for people. And right when that light touches a room, it touches everything in that room. And that's what we're supposed to be as the church, right? We're not a four-wall thing. We're the people. We're supposed to be out and we're supposed to be spreading the word and spreading. We're supposed to walk different. We're supposed to be held in high regard because of the way our actions are. And that's what we're supposed to be as men and as fathers. And we're supposed to live a different way because that's what we've been called and that's what we've been made to be.
Amen, brother. Well, with that being said, Luke, thank you for coming on to our show. If you could just share with our audience how they can reach out to you if they want to know a little bit more about Field and Faith. It'll also be on the show notes as well. But here's your opportunity, brother.
Yeah, check us out. We are a 501c3, so donations are highly suggested. But no, check us out at fieldfaith.org. If you're in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, please look us up. We have all kinds of programs. We do an 18 and over that is exploding. We're actually moving on some additional chapters around the city. And we're also getting ready to launch a thing called Dad Camp for teaching dads how to get more engaged with their kids and actually show them how to go camping and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, please check us out, fieldfaith.org.
Amen, brother. Well, thank you once again for coming on. You guys, I highly recommend check it out in the Phoenix area. This stuff is blowing up, and just continue supporting our program, continue supporting Field and Faith, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Thank you.